This rather chaotic scene on the bench is me in the process of rebuilding a set of late 60s Triumph, in this case, forks, and the owner sent them to me with all the new bits that I would need, so I decided that I'd just get on with it and do the job. And they were in a filthy state. They actually had, I think they were on a bike that was imported back from America, and they actually had oversized or over length stanchions fitted, which were in a bad way anyway, but he wanted to return them to standard spec, so we've got new stanchions, new seal holders, seals, bushes, etc. Everything was supposedly supplied that I would need, and indeed all the items were. The only problem was the seals that came with the stuff he sent me, which were inside the seal holders loosely, don't fit the fork stanchions. They're too big. The hole through them is too big, so I had to order a set of the correct ones, so I got them there. And also these circlips which hold the threaded retainer of the shuttle valve and the shuttle valve together, which screws into the bottom of the stanchion. Out of both forks I found half a circlip, that was all, so I also had to get new circlips. I have to hang my head in shame a little here, but when I undid these, or tried to undo them, they just would not budge, and there isn't much to get hold of. Now, a fairly small sort of C-spanner didn't give me the leverage that I needed, unfortunately, to get them moving, because they were screwed in really tightly. So I hang my head in shame. I had to use quite a long Stilson, or also known as pipe wrench, which is not ideal, and it has made some tooth marks there, which I filed out. They're not going to do any harm. They're just like the notches that are cut out for a C-spanner or whatever you might use. They look a bit ugly, but they're not going to do any harm. I filed any sort of protrusions away, so they'll work fine, no problem. But I might get accused of being a little rough there, but I really had no choice, I'm sorry. Anyway, they'll screw in with all the new bits fitted and they'll work, so that's all I'm worried about. These plastic bushes that fit on the stanchions between the top and bottom bronze bushes actually fit one way up, and I've got to say, I put my hands up, I didn't know which way up. The old ones that came out, one was obviously one way up, the other one, well, here they are, there's the originals. For some reason someone had cut a bit off one of them anyway. God knows what was going on in their minds, but I did a bit of googling, and I managed to find somewhere that looked very reliable and trustworthy, and that assures me that what you call the thick end of it faces down, and the thin end, as in wall thickness, there's a thicker wall thickness at one end than the other, so the thick end faces down. So that's all sorted, and I'm ready to reassemble it now. I've got my new circlip on there, on this one, so I'm hoping to reassemble one fork. I've got the both legs cleaned out, so they're ready to go. So I'm going to put a seal and all the other associated bits into a seal holder next. There's an O-ring got to go in each of them, all sorts of little bits, and these washers. I think you put the O-ring, there's a groove around the inner wall of the seal holder that the O-ring fits into. Then the seal can be pressed in, Then these washers go on top of them, I believe. And then on top of those you've got the spring seat, because obviously these are an external spring type fork. But we'll come back and have another look at it when I've got things partially or even fully assembled on one leg, and I'll discuss the exact order everything goes, and we look at the individual components in a bit more detail before I assemble the other leg. Well, we've still got a bit of mess and clutter here, but we are making progress. But I've had to get the lathe involved in this. Here's the new seal holders that the owner sent me, and I've got one of the correct seals in one of them now. So that's progress, and I thought I'd follow it up by dropping the next bit in, these washers that fit over them before the spring seats go in, and of course they won't go in, and that is that's two sets, because the owner sent me a set, they don't fit. So I thought, oh well, maybe wherever he's got them from they've been made a little bit too big to go in there, so I'll order a pair of those. I ordered a pair from a supplier that I often use and usually sends me things that fit and work no problem, and they wouldn't fit either. So well, let's grab one of the originals then. Obviously those seal holders have been cut down by somebody that wanted to customize them, but you can see that's the space there where the seal will fit, and this is the washer that goes in after it. Fits okay. Try that in one of these. No, it won't go in. So what I had to do, I was lucky that I got the lathe. I had to sort of put this in the chuck of the lathe and just reduce the outer diameter of it a little, and that now goes in. But I'm also going to have to do the same with the lower spring seats, because they don't quite go in either. It's not a biggie. I've got the lathe set up to do it. I'll give this a skim, and then that'll go in as well. And then we can move on to the next stage, hopefully fitting the fork leg and screwing this on over the stanchion, and perhaps we might have one more or less complete fork with any luck. But next up, back to the lathe. Right, thanks to my lathe I've now got one seal retaining or supporting washer that'll fit inside the seal holder, and I've also got the lower spring seat which will fit inside the seal holder. I've got obviously I've got the seal inside it as well, and in fact, let's see, I'll just get this off for a moment, tip those things out. There's the seal of the correct type and size in there, and flipped over right at the end of the threaded portion that screws onto the fork leg, you can see an O-ring. Now I had to cut a few millimetres, I had to cut that O-ring and snip a few millimetres off one end in order to get it to fit, and I wasn't really happy about that, but I thought, no way can I get this O-ring in. It just kept bunching up, and if you try to get the last little bunched up bit in, it would pop out somewhere else out the groove and whatever. And so in the end I thought, well, I've got a spare set of new ones, because the owner sent a set, and thinking that they might have been wrong when I ordered the bits I needed, the seals and so on, that were the correct bits, I thought, well, for the price of a couple more O-rings I'll get them just in case. And none of the 4 O-rings would fit in there properly, and I had to snip a bit out of one to get it in there, so it's in there now. And well, yeah, that could be a bit of a bodge, and I shouldn't do that, but interestingly enough, stay with me on this, here's what remains of the old cut down seal holder, or one of them, and look at that in there. I've got one of the new O-rings to go in there perfectly easily, and it fits nicely. I didn't have to cut it. or snip a bit out of it or anything. So that's an original seal holder. This is obviously a reproduction one that didn't want to accept the O-ring whatever I did until I cut it and snipped a bit out of it. So obviously there's a discrepancy in the fit of the O-ring in that as well. Well, as well as the seal retaining washer and the spring seat. So one to be aware of, wherever this came from and whoever made it, it's not exactly to the original specifications, and you've got to have a lathe to hand and a pair of scissors to make the important and vital components fit and hopefully work properly. So that's what I've done, and at last now I'm ready to assemble one fork, and I've got the lathe left set up ready to machine the other seal retaining washer and spring seat as well while we're at it. So I'll be on a bit more of a flyer putting the second one together. But next up, I'm hoping to show one fork put together and completed, apart from the external spring and top nut, which I haven't got, and it should be ready to go back to the owner, and I'll put the other one together in a similar manner, and we'll discuss the bits and pieces involved in putting them together in a video that I'll make fairly shortly after doing this. But just one to watch out for: the old pattern parts, and always a direct replacement and an exact fit. But luckily it was something that I could work around here. I've got one fork leg built up, and I'm now setting about putting the second one together to round the job off. But guess what? I've run into a snag. This seal holder doesn't want to screw onto the fork leg more than a few turns, and it goes on the skew. So I thought, oh, I got a problem here. Hope the fork leg's okay. But I got the old seal holder. Let's see, bear with me. Look at that, that screws on easily all the way, which is pretty much what the other new seal holder did on the other leg. But this one doesn't want to go. So I'm going to have to look into what might be wrong with that. And I've had a feel around inside the threaded portion of it, and there is an area that feels a little rough. So I'm going to use some emery in there and see if that helps it. I've got an O-ring in this one. One of the pair that I fitted, I got two pairs, but in the other seal holder I had to actually cut the O-ring and snip a section out of it in order to get it into the groove all the way around, because it appeared to be too big for the groove. Although when I tried it in an old seal holder, it fitted perfectly. This seal holder, I tried the O-ring first before thinking about maybe cutting it, and actually managed to get it to go into the groove in this one, although if you look at it, it is a little bit bunched up in places, which is why I wanted to screw this onto the leg to see if the O-ring was going to give and sort of yield and even itself out, or whether I would have to cut a little bit out of it. But I never got that far because this won't screw on. I've also got the seal retaining washer, and I've got it machined down to the same outer diameter as I had to take the other one down to for the other seal holder on the other fork. But that's not good enough. It won't fit in this one. We've got to make it smaller. Same goes for the spring seat. It's exactly the same size as the one on the other fork, because I set the lathe up to do them at the same size, all four components. But obviously this seal holder has got a slightly smaller ID than the other one. So good old pattern parts, eh? Causing headaches since God knows when. But obviously I can deal with these two quite easily. They'll just have to go back in the lathe and have another skim. But I'm a little bit concerned about the threads in this, and we may end up even having to get yet another replacement pattern part, God forbid. But that's where we're at the moment. One fork done, another one causing more headaches. Well, I finally managed to make this seal holder screw onto the fork leg, and it took a while. This is completely dry at the moment, the threads are clean and dry, and I got it going on virtually all the way by hand. But in order to achieve that, what I had to do was use my two friends here, the WD-40 and the Brasso, applied to the threads, and just screw the thing on as far as I could by hand. Then I'd take it a little bit further with this strap wrench, work it backwards and forwards, keep on winding it back down and take it a little bit further again with the strap wrench, and then back it off and work it by hand back and forth and so on, and eventually I've got the thing screwing on. And what I'll do next, I took the O-ring out just to make sure that that wasn't sort of masking how it felt when it got near the end of the threads, so I've got to put that back in. And then finally I think I can actually consider assembling the second fork. And I've also turned these two down a little more in a lathe than the pair in the other fork, probably by about 4 thou extra reduction in diameter on those two, in order to get them to fit inside this seal holder, which also appeared to be coated in some sort of thick silver paint on the inside for some reason, but removing a little bit of that with some emery showed that these two still didn't want to fit in there, so I did have to skim them down a little in the lathe to get them to go in. So finally, we're a couple of hours behind schedule putting these things together because of all these little hurdles that we've run into, but finally I think we are probably on the home straight, and I can just put things together and screw them up and assemble them and have the job done. Okay, well here we've got one fork all assembled and ready to go. Obviously it's got no oil in it apart from a few little squirts here and there that I used just to lubricate the bits and pieces as they went together. So it'll be up to the owner what fork oil he might want to use in there. And here's the other one ready to be put together now. I've got all the components on the stanchion in order. I've got the seal holder on with its seal in there and O-ring, and all these bits fit inside it okay now. We've got down here we've got the shuttle valve, which has got a circlip on it like it should have. I mean, we had half a circlip in the bottom of one fork leg before and no sign of anything else in either, so rather than being able to disappear as far as it likes up the stanchion, the shuttle valve will move as it was intended to and no further. We've got a new bottom bush on the stanchion. We've got a damper sleeve the right way round with the thick walled end at the bottom. Then we've got the bush that fits, it locates in the top of the fork leg, and its washer that separates it from the underside of the seal holder. That's all in place. Obviously we've got a new seal in there as well, and that O-ring is in there. There's a seal retaining washer, and there's our fork spring seat and top nut. There was a top nut there after all, I found. So I'm ready to just put a bit of oil on these parts and put them all together, and then we'll have a complete set of forks ready to go. In fact, what I'll do, I'll put the camera down and I'll put the fork leg in the vise and I'll oil up the parts on the stanchion and we'll stick them together. Let's just pop that down there a minute. It'll stay. So now what I'll do is get a bit of oil in here. Quickly just smear that around in there. That'll get things off to a good start in there. And likewise, just put a bit of oil on some of these bits here. Not much, because obviously there will be oil put in the forks when they're ready to go, I would hope, but just a little bit to help assembly and make sure that there's no sort of dry sticky spots to begin with. And what I could do now is just rub the oil all the way around that bottom bush. That'll get my stanchion started in the fork leg. That goes in there. Yep. The damper sleeve goes in as well. And I'm probably going to have to let go of the camera because I'll need two hands for this, but basically I'll get that bush into the fork leg, and then I'll bring this down after it and screw it up, and that'll be our second fork assembled. In fact, what I'll do, I'll put the camera down again, just have a look at that oil can or something for a minute. And would you believe it, we've run into another problem. This bush doesn't want to fit in the fork leg, so I'll have to investigate that. But hopefully, if I can get out the woods with that one, we'll have the second fork put together and that'll be the job done. Okay, well that turned out to be not too big a problem. It just needed, this upper bush just needed some very light assistance from a drift and a few taps, and that had it home. So now I can bring the seal holder down, screw that up, and I'll just get the strap wrench on that now. Hopefully I can screw that and just make sure I've got a tight grip of it in the vise as well. No, we've got another problem. I'll have to get that off again and have a look. Suddenly it doesn't seem as interested in going so far down the threads. I just want to make sure that that O-ring hasn't come out of its groove and may be the cause of some trouble. Well, I hate myself for doing this, but I had no other option. Even with the O-rings cut and a section removed from them and put back in the groove there, although I could get them into the groove, they wouldn't come down past these to seal, because basically what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to seal the threads, the top of the threads of the fork leg, to stop any oil seepage going up, well, up and over and down the threads. So I've had to do away with the O-rings because they appeared to be of the correct diameter and thickness as the originals would have been. I think the biggest problem are these fork seal holders. We've had a bit of fun with them elsewhere, haven't we? I don't think the grooves for the O-rings are deep enough, and so the section of the O-ring, there's a lot more of it sort of getting into the way. And this is an old top bush, but basically that sort of rim, if you like, of the top hat is meant to be able to just sort of tightly push into the O-ring, but instead of doing that, it was pushing the O-ring, digging the O-ring and pushing it in front of it and compressing it like that face, which is not what it's supposed to do. So I've decided I'd use the PFTE tape and do away with the O-rings, but we've obviously still got the proper and correct seals in there, so I don't think we're going to have any oil leakage. It's very disappointing when you get all these new parts and none of them want to fit or interact properly, but unfortunately it seems to be the case more often and often these days. Things don't quite fit as they should, or they're not quite the size they should have been, and we've had some shining examples of that here today. But now I'm ready finally to fit the seal holder and screw it on over the tape. And finish the job off. And there we go, that's that one going down there quite nicely, and I'll get the strap wrench on that to finish that off. I'll just put the camera down a moment while I do that. Goes and there like that. Try and hold the camera and the strap wrench. More. Right, that's tight, that's fully home. So that's the second fork reassembled, moving smoothly. Just get the top nut, put that on there. Hopefully that'll screw in to the new stanchion. Yes, it will. Finally I can go and tot up this incredible amount of hours I've had to spend on these two and let the owner know what he owes me. But finally they're done, and I can put them in a box, get them paid for and send them on their way. But it just goes to show how basically fairly straightforward, simple job can turn into an absolute nightmare and a time pit, as we've seen here. But they're fixed now, and probably good for another 40 or 50 years.